You're listening to Talking Law, the podcast where business owners just like you discover how to avoid legal landmines and build value using smart legal tips.
Hi, it's Joanna Oakey here and welcome back to Talking Law, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. Now, today we have part 2 of our 2-part series talking with Mark Bouris, the very well-known executive chairman of publicly listed Yellow Brick Road, the chairman of the SME Association of Australia, and, of course, the host of the television shows The Apprentice, and the Celebrity Apprentice on the 9 network and the Mentor on the 7 network. Now, if you have missed the previous episode of Talking Law, you might just want to skip back one episode and go and have a listen to that, episode 94. In that episode, we commence a discussion with Mark all about his business Mentored and the role of Mentored in the world of SME. Mark is a passionate advocate of SMEs, and in that episode, and indeed in this episode, episode 95, Mark and I discuss the many lessons that he learnt along the way in business. We talk about his family history of small business and the impact of working with the big name Kerry Packer. And in today's episode, we are digging further into the concept of a task force that Mark was part of in relation to digitisation for small business owners in Australia. We talk about the change that governments need to make and create for business owners in Australia, and we take a sneak look back at Mark's time on The Apprentice and his takeaways from that period of time. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. I know I absolutely love recording it, so here we go.
I sort of got a sense this at the beginning of last year. He was the treasurer at the time. The now Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, asked me would I run a task force for him inquiring into digitisation of small business owners in Australia. And I ran that task force for 3 months and I gave him a report. And one of the things I found in that running that task force, was that the small business owners in Australia, small to medium business owners in Australia, are completely spread and disparate. In other words, there is nothing that connects any of them. There is nothing in a formal sense that connects everybody.
Which is incredible. Such a large sector and such a large employer in Australia as well.
It's so important. I mean, if we don't help them out, they will, over time, they'll diminish. So if you look at, new businesses are starting compared to businesses not going out of business, people going out of business, relative to where we were, say, 10 years ago, we're way down on numbers. We haven't grown. And that's a problem because our economy is growing and our business sector is not growing at the same rate as our economy is growing. So we're going backwards. Yet our economy, as you just said, it employs somewhere between 60 and 70% of every employee in this country is employed by our small business sector. And we pay their super, we pay their tax. It's just ridiculously, it's the biggest part of our employment in Australia. So the government's very concerned about it. I'm concerned about it. I mean, from an economics point of view, we need it to prosper. And there are, sure, we've got mechanisms, the Reserve Bank's got mechanisms to help the prosperity of all Australians by reducing interest rates for homeowners. That's monetary policy. Fiscal policy is about reducing the tax rates. But what policy is directed at the biggest and most important segment of the market and business owners? None. There is no policy. There is no government policy which is attached, I should say, to that particular market in this country, which is, everyone, they said, it's the engine room of Australia. It's more than the engine room of Australia. Without it, we'd be stuffed. And that's not just in Australia. That same applies in India and America and in China and, Europe and the UK. Globally, it isn't being looked at globally. It's a global problem.
And after you completed your time on the task force, what was it something where you were then able to find recommendations at the end?
Yeah, so I gave recommendations to the government, to the Treasurer, and the Treasurer then in the next budget, in the May budget, allocated some budget to my recommendations. But then we had an election and these things sort of just get lost. I have no doubt that at some stage that the Treasurer will revisit it, Prime Minister will revisit it, I presume the Treasurer. The objective was, from his point of view, was to create digitisation for the small to medium business sector, because digitisation allows us to be more efficient in running a business, whether it be, a plumber who uses a credit card machine to get payment straight after the job instead of having to go home and send out invoices and all that sort of stuff. Just digitization of my customer base, or digitization in terms of my marketing and my business.
Right.
It creates efficiencies, and there are a lot of digital tools out there which are not being used. Australia is one of the worst countries in the world when it comes to small to medium enterprises using digital tools to run their business.
Really?
Yet Australia is one of the best countries in the world when it comes to using mobile phones, etc., from a personal point of view. So our social interaction is one of the best. We're one of the first to take things up, but when it comes to SMBs, we are one of the worst.
And why? Why is that, do you think?
We couldn't get our head around why that is the case. We just couldn't work it out. When we did all our inquiries, just Australian business owners are slow in the uptake of this, and part of it's an education game. We haven't been properly educated about it. We tend to rely on old-fashioned tools like silly things like a lot of people still don't use Xero and or QuickBooks. Invoicing. People still do physical invoicing.
Yeah. Which is incredible, isn't it?
It's madness. Or if you're delivering stuff, you run a business, but some people like to order online, you still physically deliver. In other words, you don't use any of the delivery agents, which are all online delivery agents. But at the same time, you'll be the first person to go home and buy a hamburger or your dinner on Deliveroo or Uber Eats.
Doesn't make sense, Mark. What's going on?
Doesn't make sense. So I'm a florist in Cronulla, and I really want people to buy stuff from my flower shop in in the arcade. But my online presence is pretty weak and pretty poor. Yet in my area, it's a wealthy area. Sutherland Shire, Sydney's quite wealthy. People would quite happily buy stuff online, and if I charge it, and if I just say, look, if you want to buy it online, there's a delivery charge, people will quite happily pay it. Instead, what I do is I don't do much online, but when I do it online, I feel guilty about it, and I still charge them the same price as if they would walk in the shop. And guess what? When I finish work at 4 p.m, I lock up the shop and I go and do all the deliveries till 7 p.m. Then I get home and I start invoicing people because they don't have an electronic way of billing them either.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible.
And then I'm so stuffed I can't cook dinner for my family, so I ring up Uber Eats. Yeah, I'll get dinner delivered from Uber Eats.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? That's the pain point in Australia, and that's got to change. That's what the government needs to change, and that comes from government policy. And our government onto it, but they've got so many priorities, and it's just so many priorities. And the Minister for Small Business is a different Minister for Small Business now. So the Minister for Small Business when I did it was Craig Laundy, but I guess they just got a whole list of priorities that they have to deal with, because they've only just been voted in, and cabinet got reshuffled. But I'm waiting for them to come back to me, because I'm busy now too. So, but these things need to happen in this nation, and to some extent, I've decided I'm going to do it myself.
I love it.
That's sort of what Mentor's about.
Yeah.
Teaching people how to digitise their business. I mean, to a large extent, we're doing that for the government, and if the government doesn't do it, we'll do it.
Well, I mean, it must be partly an education gap, though, because, the business owner is not going home and doing the invoicing because that's what they really want to spend their evening doing.
Correct.
Right? They just haven't had time to find a better way. They just,
Correct.
It's too hard. They've got too much on their plate, just like the government, I guess.
Correct. But I mean, the business owner, then that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to teach. I'm saying, okay, look, there's a better way of doing this stuff. Have a look at come to my website when I relaunch, and you'll see that we've got tools on there too. So there is a better way of doing stuff, and that's my education game.
I absolutely love it. And I love, this has just been such a brilliant conversation, Mark. I just love the passion that you bring to this area, and I just love the whole concept of Mentored. And do you know what I really love? I love that you're brave enough to take ideas and just keep pitching until you find that connection that you're looking for, I guess, because I think, as I said right in the beginning, I think many business owners give up too soon because they don't understand that not hitting the outcome immediately is actually just part of the process,
Correct.
They don't understand. It's constantly listening, watching, hearing, and pivoting.
Yeah, and I'm sure people think, oh, it's all right for him, he's good money, he's done. Listen, I go through hell with this business. But when it comes to people, when it comes to the structure, the idea, the business model, the websites, I go through hell. And I don't have 50 people working for me. I've got 3 people working for me. And, I have a very small team. And because the business can't afford to employ a whole lot of people at this stage. I put revenue before costs, which means I have to do most of the stuff. So for anybody out there who's running a business, who's thinking about starting a business, I'm in the same boat. I mean, I'm starting up a new business. This is a startup, and it has all the usual startup problems. It's got the only thing I've got an advantage of is I've actually been through a few startups, and I've taken them from zero to large amounts. But by the way, what I'm telling you guys, that's what my business is about, is actually sharing that with you. What I want to do is share with you what I've learned. It's not going to always turn your business around or whatever, but at least come and listen to it, see what worked for me.
I love it, and hopefully we'll make sure we get from you some links to some of your events. So if you're listening to this into the future, we'll have some links through to some of
Thank you very much.
Events, and also to the SME Association and anything else you would like us to link through to.
Thanks very much. Well, I'm going to keep that in mind. I will parlay that into my social team, who consists of an intern and a full-time guy. They're not a big team, but. I'll parlay that into it, and we will come back to you with some stuff.
Brilliant.
We'll let you know the actual launch date of the new website.
Let us know. We're right behind you, Mark. We want to promote it.
Thank you very much. All right, small business owners and startups, we've got to all hang together.
We do. We've got a group together, Mark, where you've got to. You're absolutely right.
Betcha. And march on.
Yeah. As we end, I just have one last question. I'm just really interested, taking you back a few years to your time on The Apprentice. I guess that's when you came to the attention of many businesses in Australia, some of these, the interesting view into the world of you testing out some of these cadets, I guess as we might call them. But what did you learn from that experience? What do you think was your biggest learning, your biggest takeaway?
The thing I learned in that show was how to ask questions.
Right.
So, I don't know anything about television. I got thrown into the deep end, and I learned about myself. Always have a crack. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it works, it doesn't work. I'd never done a TV show. I had no idea what I was doing, not a clue. And I just went and did it, and sort of developed it my own style of doing it. And don't try and copy somebody else, like their actual style. But you be guided by what you see that's successful, but build your own style as well. But I learned in that TV series, think about what someone's putting to you and how to actually unwrap it and ask the questions that need to be asked. And I used to ask that of all the, let's call them the participants. I used to know what questions to ask people and how to put them in a position of being uncomfortable with an answer. And I became quite proficient at working out who's lying to me, who's telling me the truth, with those uncomfortable questions. I became quite good at it after 56 episodes I did. and by the one episode is 70 hours of filming. So one episode of 42 minutes takes 70 hours of filming. Jeez. So I did 56 episodes of 70 hours. So that's a lot of hours in front of a camera. It's thousands and thousands of hours. And so I got a pretty good understanding of how to ask questions, because that's all I did. I only used to ask questions on the show. I never gave anyone any answers. It was always questions. What did you do here? How did you feel about that? Why did that happen? What did you learn from that experience? That was the tenure of the show. And this particular celebrities, they're pretty clever. So I had to learn, and sometimes they form alliances, and watching alliances, how they form, and they think they're going to, all the men think they're going to outsmart all the women or whatever. It's sort of an interesting game. It was gamesmanship. It was a lot of fun whilst it lasted. It's an old format. It probably I don't know if it necessarily works today, that particular format, but it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was a good time.
Yeah. Well, it was good viewing. I enjoyed it.
Thanks very much.
Sounds like questions have formed a really pivotal part in your life.
Totally.
So I guess this links back to the playbook as well. So it would be remiss of me.
It does.
Back at that point. But I guess my very, very last question is, do you see yourself as Australia's Donald Trump? Is a play at PM next? Will we hear this?
No. No, I tell you what, The question, you can ask me the question if I would give you that answer based on how he sees out his term and whether he gets re-elected or not.
Right.
Because imagine if you said, I want to be Donald Trump, or I want to emulate Donald Trump, and then he fails in the next election campaign, or alternatively he turns out to be the worst president that America's ever had, or a war starts or something like that. That'd be the worst. That'd be my worst outcome.
Yeah.
So look, I have no political aspirations.
Right.
I do have aspirations to try and influence change, but I think I'm probably more effective at doing that outside of the political environment than I would be inside the political environment.
Absolutely fascinating. Mark, I tell you what, this has been a cracker. Thank you very much for coming to join us today.
You're welcome. Thanks very much for having me.
And I absolutely want to just make sure your team lets us know whenever you're holding an event.
Oh, fully. For sure.
Make sure we promote it for you.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. And that's it for our two-part series with Mark Bouris. As I said earlier on in this episode, if you didn't catch the episode before this in Talking Law, then just make sure you head back to episode 94. It was a fabulous episode, and I highly recommend you go back and have a listen to that. It talks all about what Mentored is and the role that it as a business plays for SMEs, the gap that it's filling. We talk about the playbook and its importance for SMEs. And if you don't know what that means, then there's good reason to go back to the episode. We also talked in that episode about following your passion and never stopping innovating. We also talked about the concept of a mentor and what pulls Mark Bouris to the SME world as a whole. All right, now, and if you're really enjoying these episodes with Mark, you might also want to check out our sister podcast, the Deal Room podcast, where we talk with Mark about a number of elements that relate to business sales and acquisitions, because his business Mentored also connects into the business buy and sell space. So we dig into that side in episode 105 of the Deal Room, and we look at investigating different ways of selling a business and structuring a business sale, and how you can turn your business into something more appealing to buyers. And of course, if you would like to link through to Mark or to make contact with any of our lawyers at Aspect Legal, if there's any legal issues that you would like to discuss with our legal eagles, then all you have to do for either of those is to head over to our website at talkinglaw.com.au, and there we have a link straight through to Mark at Mentored, and of course we have a link through to a free booking engine for our lawyers at Aspect Legal. And finally, if you enjoyed what you heard today, then I'd be ever so grateful if you could pop over to Apple Podcasts or your favourite podcast player and leave us a review, and of course at the same time make sure you've hit subscribe. Well, that's it. Thanks again for listening in. You've been listening to Joanna Oakey and Talking Law, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. See you next time. Are you looking for a top quality legal team to assist you in your organisation? Aspect Legal is an innovative commercial legal practice that specialises in providing fast and professional services for their clients. If you'd like to chat about how we might be able to assist you, simply head over to our website at aspectlegal.com.au to book in a time for a free discussion with one of our lawyers.
Thanks for listening to Talking Law. Tune in next time for more smart legal tips and tricks to keep you clear of those legal landmines. If you want to get a download of today's show notes, head over to talkinglaw.com.au.
Are you looking for a top quality legal team to assist you in your organisation? Aspect Legal is an innovative commercial legal practice that specialises in providing fast and professional services for their clients. If you'd like to chat about how we might be able to assist you, simply head over to our website at aspectlegal.com.au to book in a time for a free discussion with one of our lawyers.